Welcome to On Marketing, a show where we explore marketing's first principles, mental models, and my favorite, contrarian takes. This is a space where thinking differently about marketing isn't just encouraged, it's a rule. My aim is not to tell you what to think, it's assisting you in improving how you think about marketing and life. It's September 15th, 2023. I'm Jordan Ogren, a marketing strategist by day and a podcast host by night. Today I chatted with Timothy Wier, a seasoned marketing strategist and content creation expert. Timothy's diverse background spanning various marketing and content strategy roles reflects his unique and helpful perspective. In the episode, we discuss the evolving role of AI in content marketing, navigating ethical considerations with AI, strategies for effective digital storytelling, balancing creativity and data in marketing, and embracing innovation in a fast-paced digital world. Ready to get into the episode? Before we do, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter to get new episodes with extra insights delivered to your inbox every single Friday morning. The link to do that is in the first line of the show notes. Also, a reminder that if you're watching this on YouTube, you can listen to it as a podcast. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, you can go and see my beautiful mug on YouTube. So whatever works best for you, please indulge in that way. And finally, I know my legal department made me put this in. Opinions shared in this podcast are individual views of the hosts and guests, not representing their employers or associated organizations. This content is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered professional marketing guidance. Listeners should act on the information provided at their own risk. I'll see you on the other side. What is marketing? What job should marketing get done in a company?
Great question. Big question. Always a great one to start off with. So I had a mentor earlier on in my career that coined this phrase. He used to say marketing is sales at scale, and I really like that succinct approach to it. I think where I would probably nuance or maybe kind of develop that idea a little bit more is, at the end of the day, marketing's responsibility is to drive revenue for the company. I think if you're investing dollars into a marketing department, you do want to see a return on investment. That's pretty obvious. Uh, but the tools that marketing uses to do that are very different. They don't look the same as what a salesperson is going to do. So with a salesperson, it's pretty, you have a pretty clear correlation between you make a certain number of calls, you send a certain number of emails, that converts into meetings, that converts into deals and pipeline, and then eventually you have your close rate. It's pretty linear, right? If I was to take this pen, right, and draw out uh, the similar path for marketing, I just have like a ball of twine sitting right here. Like obviously you go through all the steps. We know about the marketers, the product journey. We know about the path to purchase and all of that stuff. But it never is linear, and it never goes the way that I always think it's going to go. Customers, tend to surprise me because they're human. So I think that's eventually. I mean, that's where you want to go. And the other thing too is that question. I mean, it is a big question because it really depends on the size of the company too. If you're in Apple's marketing department, I would bet money that they are not measured primarily on how many leads they generate, right? And they're a B2C mainly, so that's a different situation. But they have a different objectives, say, than a startup that just raised its first million and is trying to make that ROI. So I think the question does vary based on the company, but at the end of the day, you're driving awareness, and ultimately you want that to become business. And the tools you use, depending on your size, are gonna contribute to that.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. So sales at scale, like you're
Yeah.
able to, marketing is able to scale sales. So in your opinion, did sales or marketing come first, chicken and the egg? What was the first kind of function that people deployed throughout history? I know you're not like a history buff, but
Oh,
just
I would probably say sales, bartering. I think historically that's kind of how we understand it. Um, and I think that if you look at marketing fundamentals, they don't really differ from a lot of sales fundamentals in terms of principles. And we can get into that, I think, as we get into the conversation. But it's just that the tactics and the tools are different. But ultimately, I mean, marketing and sales are on the same team. We're one team. We're the revenue team, and yep, I that would be so. Yeah, I would say sales, but whatever. Chicken and the egg question. What is that? Where do you get with that, right?
Well, I think like if something is a scaling something, it should be the thing that came after it. Versus
Yeah,
if marketing
sure.
was here first, then really it's almost backwards. If then it's amplifying sales, where really it was like sales is the addition. But I think what you said is how I would agree. People were likely door to door or cave to cave, maybe in that sense, trying to just sell stuff, and they started to realize, wait, 95% of the people that want to buy our product aren't or that might buy our product aren't ready to buy it right now. So how do we do this sales thing at scale, or how do we do this where people can engage with it? Does that spark any thoughts in your mind, but just between the relationship?
Absolutely. And you can even look at this on a microcosm level. And, when I was building my content marketing agency, one of the things and any new business owner is doing is, working out your value prop, right? And I thought, when I initially started out, I thought, oh, I've got something really valuable to offer to early stage startups that are just beginning on their journey and, want to bring someone on to really help get their content marketing operation off the ground and can't afford a full-time team, so it's easier to outsource and all of that. What I quickly realized is these organizations in early stages didn't need content marketing. I would say they needed content marketing, but we live in a world of scarcity, and you've got to deploy your resources very specifically, and you've got to prioritize them. And so a lot of these organizations, I look to them and said, I'm looking at your KPIs and your objectives. They wanted deals, they wanted pipeline. I'm like, you need to hire a sales team. So I think if you look even microcosmically, what does the business bring on first? They bring on sales first, and then, I had a friend of mine that we used to work together, and we would always say marketing is always the last to be hired and the first to be fired in terms of scaling an organization. And I think that generally pans out, across the board.
Hmm. No, I like that, and I think there's some value in the conversation just between sales and marketing and trying to create the different definitions, because sometimes it can be very muddied in the sense of like I get hired for a marketing job and next thing you know I'm doing hard sales, and it's like this isn't marketing.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, marketing is going to be so differently for every company, but I think which this podcast aims for is just that fundamentals of thinking about where do we play, what's our value prop, all of these kind of strategic, which then might fall
Yeah.
more into like strategic planning. But really, I feel the chief marketing officer is define the market. How are we going to play in it? I mean, that's in the definition, but
Sure.
I never had that idea or definition, because it's always like marketers do social media, marketers do
Right.
content.
Right. And that is, a lot of people think of marketing as a tactical focus, and mainly because the tactical work is what's visible, right? But anyone who's involved in marketing knows that, before you post a blog post, how many subject matter experts have you interviewed? How much research have you done? How have you thought about where does this post fit into the buying journey? The person who's going to read it, where are they? What are the objections they're going to have in that moment as they encounter that content, and how can you help respond to it? Uh, Most people who aren't involved in marketing just see the blog post, and so they're like, "Oh, we need somebody to write our blogs." But there really is there's so much that goes into that, and as a content writer, I'm reliant on a lot of content strategists internally within companies to provide those strategic um, those strategic assets, so that I can do my work most effectively.
I like that. So, Timothy, jumping a little bit to a different topic here, but still on this kind of the root or the fundamentals of marketing. What's something you've changed your mind on in marketing, kind of the fundamentals, or more strategically, or even executionary, that you've believed to be true a year ago, 2 years ago? What's something you've kind of shifted?
Yeah, if you go back and look at my LinkedIn content from 2019, 2020, right about there, I was pretty much hard I was on the bandwagon that marketing, and specifically content, our primary KPI and our primary objective is driving sales. We should be measured by leads and conversions and stuff like that. And I still believe that to an extent. That given what we said in the conversation, I still hold that view. But I've really become a lot more aware of the importance of brand, and brand has taken a greater priority in how I think about marketing since then. And maybe that's because, as I've grown as a marketer, I would initially be focused very on the tactical stuff, because that's where people start out, and then as you grow and you mature, you take on more strategic responsibilities. Um, but a great example of this is when I first started out as a marketer, you know, it was very, we were using HubSpot to measure attribution, and we were looking for that linear progression, very much, mirroring that sales conversion journey, right? And then very recently, about a year or two ago, I was working with a client, and they were investing a lot of dollars in events. They were going to these conferences, these trade shows, and as you well know, and our listeners know, I mean, these things are quite expensive. You put a lot of resources into them. You send your salespeople, you're flying people out, you're putting them up in the hotel, you're shipping God knows what swag and all of that stuff you're doing for the booth and stuff like that. You want to see a return on investment. And this client, uh, they were going to all of these shows, and they've been in business for probably about 3 years at the time, and nobody knew who they were. They would go there, they would set up, and people, the number one question they asked, well, whose are you? I've never heard of you before, right? So basically, for about a year, I worked with them and worked with their internal marketing team to really start aggressively marketing these trade show audiences, right? So we did blog posts, email campaigns, LinkedIn. We did some sales enablement content, so salespeople could go in and reach out to them in advance and say, "Hey, I'm going to be at this show. Come by booth, whatever, and I'm going to be there." We would send these emails, and what's interesting is I would send these marketing emails out, right? And they get decent uh, open rates, right? Not bad. They weren't on the high end, but they weren't on the low end either. And they would really get abysmal click through rates. Like nobody was clicking through on these emails, and you'd have the CEO coming to us being like, well, why aren't these getting clicks on them? Why are we wasting all this time and this investment in these emails? But what's interesting is over the course of that year, sales would come back from these conferences and they'd say, last year we went to this conference and nobody knew who we are. This year they're coming to our booth. They know exactly who we are and they're ready to have the conversation. And I've booked however many meetings that we're going to follow up with next week. So I think that's an example of that nonlinear attribution. If you look at those correlations between marketing activity and the results that you're driving, right? You could see how marketing is influencing and contributing to the organization. And so a lot of the content we were doing, I would say, was brand, right? We were just trying to elevate the brand, but it had a tangible result at the end. But then again, I would also say, thinking strategically, unless we knew that's what we were doing, we probably wouldn't have known to look for that correlation. So it's not accidental that this stuff happens. You need to know what you're doing. You need to know what you're looking for, preferably in advance. We go to the CEO and say, here, let's set some expectations. We're investing in all this content. The KPI that we're driving is it's intangible, but it's valuable, right? It's how aware are people of the brand when they come to the booth, and how does that correlate to bookings after the conference is over? And so, so there's an example, I think, of how I've kind of modified my thinking on brand. Not that marketing isn't meant to promote sales, but I think how we think about how marketing promotes sales can be a lot more expansive and holistic than just looking at leads and conversion rates and stuff like that. That stuff is valuable, but I think marketing is so much more than that.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's a natural, at least for me, was a progression of thinking everything's linear and cause and effect, and that you can draw that down to a perfect science. But now, where I stand, I see kind of like what you're saying is sometimes marketing is driving the intangibles because the intangibles make sales easier. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy marketing as a definition, is to make sales easier, because then it's very unique on how do we go and make
Yeah.
sales easier. Brand is one of those ways that essentially lubes up somebody to have a better conversation, using a very interesting word, lube, but like that's just what kind of comes out when you have a brand, when you're educating and you've helped people make progress when they didn't need it, didn't need your product, but they just needed to make progress on something, and your X or Y helped them. It's going to make that sales conversation, when that time is right, so much easier, rather than like, so who are you and what do you do and what makes you different, versus I instantly know I just need some of these specs checked off, or whichever that may be.
Absolutely. And let me 2 points to that. One is I actually wrote an article probably over a year ago that I wrote it. I wrote it when we were first talking about a recession happening, and we've been kind of, I think that we're talking about a rolling recession now, and so we've been in a recession for who knows how long. But when we first were talking about it, I wrote an article. It's the title is "Don't Cut Back on Marketing in a Recession." I'll send you the link, and you could put it in the show notes or whatever.
Yep.
Um, and one of the arguments I make is that when people aren't spending, that's actually the best time to invest in marketing counterintuitively because you're reducing that friction. So they may not be spending today, but if you're investing in marketing, and I was specifically talking about content marketing, if you're investing in that when people aren't spending, they're still going to be consuming the content. It's still going to be working on them. They're still going to be thinking about it. I use the term reducing friction, kind of similar to what you were talking about. And when they're ready to buy, when the market gets better, whatever that is going to be, and budgets open back up and people are ready to start spending, who are they going to go to? They're going to go to the person that you first you would first think about. So I think that's absolutely you're right on the money there.
Yeah, I think there's always a consideration set. And I think the goal with marketing at times is to be in that, usually the top part of that consideration set. And so, how do you do that content and all these
Yeah,
things? And usually, if others are cutting back, that's an easy way to take a few steps up that consideration set if others
yeah.
aren't creating content, because then a year goes by and you've kind of lost this company from your mind because they kind of cut back when another comes. So, totally. And actually, in prep, I read that. So, I already have that link
Oh, there
ready
you go. Perfect.
to
Yeah.
put in the show notes. It was a very, very good article. And I
Thank
think
you.
it's something that regardless of a looming like recession, whenever, it's just important to always kind of focus on how do we keep investing, even if, we're not getting the tangible results
Right.
always. That's awesome. All right. Now, I think you talked a lot about content marketing. I think one pro of that is, and we haven't really named it, is kind of building the trust that you have with your audience, and content marketing is a perfect way. I mean, I haven't ever built trust with someone like cold pitching me. Usually it does the complete opposite. So why does content marketing create trust, or how do you think of content marketing in the goal of building trust, or is that not usually a top priority with content for you?
I think it's absolutely a top priority, but let me zoom back a little bit and kind of put what you just said, which I think is really important, but let's put that in a broader context. Um, every piece of communication that your business does or that you perform on behalf of your business, if you're leveraging a personal brand, every single piece of communication trains your audience of how to think about you. And for example, I'll just take a blog post. If you're writing a blog post that's 300 words long, and is just full of fluff and it's just there. We're kind of phoning it in because we read somewhere that we need to be putting SEO content on our website. What does that tell people about your business? It tells them that you're not willing to go the extra mile. You're just phoning it in. You're just doing things because you have to do them. Now, that may be true. That may be not, but that's what people are going to think. Similarly, on the flip side, if you post a highly esoteric uh, article that is so technical that it can only be read by somebody who's had 3 graduate degrees in this particular area. I think specifically in the technology field, this is really important. It's only for it's inside baseball. It's only for people who really know this material. What are you training people to think about your business? That you're only for a certain category of experts. You may or you may not be, and that may not even be your intention with the content, but that's how people are receiving it, right? And so when we're talking about building trust, and that idea of you're training people how to think about your business, one of the things you want to train people to think about you is that you're trustworthy. And that, I think, is where this plays into in terms of content marketing. Is, are you creating content that I give an example. I'm working with a client right now. We're doing a bunch of projects around generative AI, right? And one of our biggest concerns is that this technology is so new, and there really hasn't been much accessible content that's written about it, for the layperson. And so we're really facing this challenge, and I think we're well positioned to overcome it. But one of our considerations is we want to make sure that when we're writing about generative AI, we're not making rookie mistakes that make us look like we don't know what we're talking about because the company is trying to uh, um, present an offering around this area, and we're kind of laying the groundwork for that right now. That's a huge consideration. When I'm posting about ChatGPT, and I know we're going to talk about AI later in this conversation, it's very important that I know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, somebody who knows a little bit better than I can look back and say, well, you're wrong on X point, so I'm not going to listen to you on Y. So, I mean, that's one way to build credibility. Another way that's I think is really important to building trust is using examples in your writing. I try to, in my own content and in this conversation when I'm talking to clients and prospects on sales calls, you try to bring real world examples into it. Show that you actually you're not just talking, that you're actually a practitioner, which I think is what those of us who spend time on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people who have opinions, but uh, and there are lots of great practitioners on there, but I think you have to weed through to find those really awesome people. So I think all of that plays together in that what do you want your audience to think about you, and are you presenting yourself in a way that trains them to see you as somebody who's trustworthy?
That's really well put, Timothy. One idea out of that is just that fact of training your audience. And I think it goes to that point of whether you have a newsletter or whatever, just sending it to send it does train people to essentially tune you out. Oh, it's another email from this company that isn't going to bring value. And I
Yeah.
think we're very unaware of the unintended consequences of content or the kind of overdoing it with content. I mean, that's a hard line to draw in the sand, but I think it's again, marketing, it depends. Every company, every audience is
Hmm.
going to want the different kind of content frequency type, whatever. And I think that's so important to think, okay, yes, I want my content to get this message across,
Right.
but what's an unintended consequence if this and this happen? They'll tune us out. Okay, do we need to post this?
Well, and this goes back to our we were talking about fundamentals earlier, just real quick, is you have to know your audience. If you don't know your audience, you're not going to be able
Yeah.
to effectively market to them, because it's not just about the obvious stuff. Obviously, if you've built a product, actually this is not obvious to a lot of people, but uh, the successful companies that build products, right? They at least know their audience well enough, right, to be able to build something of value. That's easy. If you're working with any company that has any measure of success, that's step one, 101 level stuff, right? But knowing your audience goes so much deeper than that. And part of it is, what you were just talking about, being aware of your audience to the point that you know the unintended consequences. You know the verbiage, right? What's that one phrase that you're going to use? I do some work in the agriculture industry, and the terminology is so specific. If you work there, it took me like 2 to 3 years working in that space just to be able to have the conversation, right? And you have to know that, but that's about that very specific audience, and a different audience is going to be different. So uh,
Hmm.
you have to go deeper, and I think what you said about unintended consequences, well said. I think that's absolutely critical.
Yeah, thank you, Timothy, for bringing it back to the fundamentals of understand your audience, but taking that even continually further. Okay, we know the demographics. What are the psychographics? Okay, we know the psychographics.
Yeah.
Can we write their journal for them? No. Okay, we need to keep talking to them more. So then essentially when we write content or we write a landing page, it's like, damn, they came into my bedroom, took my journal and slapped it on this landing page because they know me
Yeah.
so well. So I really like that kind of touch on to constantly the fundamentals and reorientating around there. One final topic on just marketing and kind of not maybe the fundamentals, but maybe on the fundamentals, talking about future trends in content marketing. You touched on a little bit generative AI, that's the talk of the town. Rather than focus on that, which we likely will in 10 years, where do you think content marketing is? Like what's different for content? What stays the same?
Yeah, I think we still will have content marketing in 10 years. I would not venture a guess as to what form it's going to take, and I think that's a very wise thing. I'm not going to predict what's going to be the future. 10 years ago, if you told me that YouTube and AI, or sorry, YouTube and LinkedIn would be like two of the biggest platforms for B2B marketing, like I would have, well, first of all, I wouldn't have even known what B2B marketing was 10 years ago. Like I was, yeah, that was a little bit ago, but seriously, like you can't predict exactly. But at the end of the day, humans are going to be humans, and people are going to be looking for information. People are going to be hungry for information. They're going to be hungry for value. So I think what will stay the same is that people are going to want valuable content. The written word is going to be essential. It's going to be central because you start with a great foundation of written content. You can deploy that across any channel that audio and video and all of that stuff. I think that the written word is going to be essential. But how that's deployed, I don't know. Uh, and I think what's going to change is there's such a proliferation of content right now, and this is hard to kind of predict where things are going to go. But I would say that I don't see that proliferation of content coming down. I think it's getting easier and easier to make content. I mean, TikTok was like a huge leap forward in terms of people being able to make video content and put that online. I think generative AI is going to do the same for the written word. I don't know that it's there yet, but it probably will, especially kind of on the consumer level. I don't think as much on the B2B level, but we can get into that if you want. Um, and But I think that the more content proliferates, the more value, expertise, trust, as we were talking about, I think these are going to be the differentiators. And so I think that these and we're coming back to fundamentals. I guess that's what makes them fundamental, right? The people who can master that, the brands and companies that can do that and have the resources and personnel to do that, that's going to be, I think that's going to be the differentiator in 10 years.
Hmm.
So we'll
I
see.
love that. Yeah, yeah. No, it's smart move not to make a prediction because I would post on the, I would take this clip and post in 10 years when we're
Yeah,
doing something so differently that we couldn't even imagine. So a very good
right.
point that things are moving so fast that there's sometimes no value even in predicting a future that's so far away. But I think your content or just what you shared was valuable. Humans are humans. So yes, we change slightly with the, we use the tools, but the tools also change us. So we do change, but really humans have stayed the same. So focusing on those, how do you see marketers working with AI, or like what is the ideal state of a marketer trying to remove it out of B2B, B2C, whatever? Let's just focus on
Yeah,
marketers. How can they use AI? What should it look like when they're using it
I
right
am
now?
so glad you asked that question because I don't know very many that are giving this answer. So here it is. Here it is. To me, I understand that generative AI specifically is to the word processor what the word processor was to the electric typewriter, what the electric typewriter was to pen and paper. That's how I see it. It is a tool. It is a great tool, a tool is only as good as the person who knows how to use it. I'll give you a perfect example. There was an article in New York Times and I don't remember exactly when it was. It was fairly recent, like in the last couple of months. And a professor was looking at student papers and noticing just the number of data and references in those papers that were just completely hallucinated by ChatGPT, right? It just made it up. Just made up all this data. And I when I first started using, I was using Jasper before I was using ChatGPT, and I noticed the same thing. I would ask it for 5 stats, and it would just give me made up statistics. I would ask it for a quote, and I knew what the quote was, and it would give me a made up quote from this person that wasn't accurate at all. And so, like, these hallucinations have been deeply embedded in the software. So I think that if you don't know what the output is supposed to be, you almost can't actually use the tool to get to the output. But for those of us who have an idea and we have an end goal in mind when generating this creative content, we can use the tool to get there that much faster. So I think that's where it's going to play. Another thing that uh, I think could be really interesting. I don't think the technology is there yet. Um, I see possibly. Here's a prediction, and so you can pull this up in 10 years if this doesn't happen. But um, you know, one of the trends that I'm seeing are companies that are using proprietary generative AI models that they're training in house with their own data, and I could totally see companies using these with vertical specific information and proprietary customer data, and so almost these like very niche proprietary generative AI models that then in-house content writers can use to then generate content that's more valuable that much faster. I don't know exactly what the path to that looks like. I know a little bit about generative AI, but I'm not by no means a technical expert. But that might be, I mean, that's something that is a neat idea, and maybe somebody can take that and go make a bunch of money off of it because
I like that answer. So, using that tool as a tool kind of framework, do you see then the marketer using this tool compared to how the marketer would use the internet or the word processor or the typewriter? Do you see them using it a little bit more, essentially infusing maybe like essentially this AI thing is your co-pilot, quote unquote, rather than the word processor never could do that. It was just a pure tool that you had the outcome and it didn't add any intelligence to it or consciousness. Do you see AI having more, or generative AI have more potential for seeping into work in a
right.
different way than the previous tools?
I think so. I think that's a really good point. But I mean, the word processors have, in many ways, kind of started us on that journey. I mean, spell check and grammar check are two examples of that. I have my copy of Strunk and White up there on the shelf, as every good writer should have. But I very rarely crack it open unless I have a very specific grammatical question, because we all have spell check, we have grammar check, we have Grammarly, right? And so I think I use the word processor specifically because it kind of started us on that path. But I think almost certainly, I'll tell you, like, one of the ways that I use generative AI, um, and I do not, none of the words generated by ChatGPT end up in front of a client, right? I just make that very, very clear. I think there's legal and ethical considerations there. But I'll use it, if I'm writing on a topic with which I'm, only semi-familiar, I'll use it to generate kind of like a basic listicle of like things that if I'm listing say 10 things every modern recruiter needs to know. I do some work in the recruiting and staffing phase, right? And 10 traits of the modern recruiter. I'll generate that list because I could come up with 5 of them. There's 5 others on the list that I hadn't even thought about before. So I think to that point it's really helpful. I think it's also good. I use it in prepping for subject matter expert interviews in an industry with which I'm unfamiliar, getting that basic information because it really does very efficiently aggregate a lot of that information. You have to be aware of data hallucination and inaccuracies and all of that, but it does help me so that when I go and sit down with a VP of a company and getting their insights for content, we're starting at a 201, 301 level, not at a 101 level. So those kind of applications I think are going to be helpful for the writer.
I like that example because if you think about how that currently is done, it would likely be given to an assistant or an intern. Hey, give me the context on this industry, this field. So now essentially you're removing a person, and this marketer can become more of this superhuman, this superhero, because they
Yeah.
have essentially these powers that they didn't have before. And one word that comes to my mind is a second brain. I think AI is going to be really good at having 2 brains because it can go into your brain if you write a lot. And I think that's Notion has a new AI tool that I think is very effective because I do a lot of writing in Notion. So then it can use all of, to your point, of companies, but even personal, you can use all of that of like, hey, take everything that I've ever written and give me 5 new ideas that I haven't touched on deeper or that I could go. And it
Yeah.
just is this kind of like a second brain where you might call a friend, you might call or hire someone, but now AI is enabling you to move a bit quicker. And I think that's where the value for me has really come, is essentially doing things that I would have took more time or I wouldn't even have been able to do on my own, which touches on a
Yeah.
lot of the things you said there.
Well said, and I completely agree.
Awesome. All right. I think I learned enough from you there. Hopefully the 2 to 3 listeners still with us also did. I think it's time to hop into the marketing hot seat. This is
All
a
right.
new segment on the show, so anything can go. And just remember that this represents me and not my company. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So first question,
So
we're
first
gonna
of all,
jump.
should we like insert a pause so that you can put a little jingle in there for the marketing hot seat? Nah, just
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. That'll be
kidding.
season 3. We'll actually
Okay,
get some
awesome. We'll have some
soundtrack.
jingles. Yeah.
I love it. All right, we're going to jump into these verse questions. So I'm going to go this or that, this or that. Email or social media posts for building a community?
um, I said I was going to give quick answers on this, but now I'm double thinking. No, I think social media for attraction, email for depth and nurture. There we
Perfect
go.
answer. In-house content creation or outsourcing?
Outsourcing. Come on, I can't
Of
undercut my own business,
course.
man. Although let
Lo-
me clarify that. Let's go with embedded outsourcing. There
so
you
what's
go.
that? Define that for me
So
quickly.
embedded outsourcing, this is what I do and kind of where my bread and butter is I'm not employed by the company specifically. I'm an outsourced content creator, but I embed with their marketing team. So I'm on marketing calls and I'm in conversation with their sales teams and CEO and all of that. And depending on the company, that relationship is more integrated and embedded than others, obviously. But it's kind of the best of both worlds. You get to know the company, know the brand, know the audience, but I'm not as expensive as a full time writer.
I love that because I do think that sometimes the outsource can be too far from the company if they're not
Yeah,
embedded, quote unquote. I love that. That's a
know the
perfect image.
customer. We were just talking about that.
The
Yep,
fundamentals, damn it. All right,
yep.
long form articles or short blog posts?
Long form, all day, every day.
Organic or paid?
Organic.
Which is the future, AI generated content or human writers or both?
I think I kind of answered that question, but you know what? I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna say it's the human because
Awesome.
AI could disappear tomorrow. Human writers are still gonna be we're still gonna be working.
Amen to that. All right, yes or no questions. Is content still king or queen?
Yes,
Do you need to create and focus content moving forward with all of the different things that a business can do?
absolutely yes.
Is it possible to accurately measure and attribute the ROI of content marketing?
Yes, but see our earlier conversation for how to do
I
that.
love that. I love that. Will AI content become the norm? So will content that's heavily infused with AI be normal in the future?
I think yes. I think unfortunately more people are going to do it badly, but you know that
Agree with
means
that.
hopefully I'll still that's good for me. That means I'll still have a job, right?
Yes, yes, that's important. Is the golden age of building blogs over? A lot of people could say you can build a blog quickly and get an audience. Is that over, or is there still reason to invest there?
I think the golden age of building sucky blogs is over. There
Amen.
you go.
All right, this is a little bit more open-ended here, so if you have more context, please add it. What's one of the most overrated trends in content marketing right now that you can't stand?
All right, here we go. I got something. I came prepared for this one. All right.
Hey.
Um, this is I've seen this on LinkedIn for years, and now it's happening on X as all the LinkedIn people move over to X now. It's social media navel gazing. It is all of these people posting about their journey, posting on LinkedIn or posting on X or whatever it is. Just stop doing that, okay? Unless, I mean, the one exception, and this is not an original thought. Jason Bana really did some. I think we both follow him. He did a great post on this, so I'm kind of stealing it from him. But unless you're selling LinkedIn marketing services, your content shouldn't be about LinkedIn. Your content should be about what is the thing you're selling, what value can you offer to your audience. So I would even say that LinkedIn X whatever navel gazing, that's probably, I think it's stretching to even call that a marketing trend, but I think a lot of people are pretending that it's marketing and it's not.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's something I've seen a lot too, but I've never formulated the thoughts like you
Yeah.
did there. So I appreciate that.
Well,
What's
Jason did
a
it first, so.
Yeah, yeah. Jason, then you. What's a other than that? What's a controversial opinion you hold about content or marketing?
I we went through this phase where short form was going to be the future, and I think that we can learn something from the fact that Joe Rogan is the most popular podcast in the world. I think, definitely in the states. I think people want long form content. They want detail. They want substance. I think they just don't want boring, and they don't want bad content. And so I think we can all learn from that. Is long form is great, but it's how you construct it and it's how you deploy it that really matters. So I think
Love.
the obsession with short form just now. I think that I'm not on board with that.
What's one of the biggest myths about writing?
I've got two for you. Myth number one: writing is a predictable process. Myth number two: writing is not a predictable process. And all my writers are
You
going to understand exactly what I mean by that.
can... Oh, I love it. I love it. If you could abolish one common practice in marketing, what would it be?
Um, Not talking to sales. And it surprises me how many marketing and sales organizations are still siloed. I was kind of spoiled because the two organizations where I was really started had some responsibility in house and in managing marketing. We were talking to sales all the time. Whether it was virtually or just going across the hall in the office. And so this is strange to me why you wouldn't talk to sales. My marketing always improved. And I think the other thing too is, and I understand why people don't want to talk to sales because sales people don't know anything about marketing, like really, unless they've worked in it before. But they know the customer. And so if you can get to them and you can understand the customer through them and you can understand what they're trying to do, then you can make sure that you could take your expertise as a marketer and your skills and your value and use it to drive benefit both for you and for the sales team. So I wouldn't say you need to just do whatever the sales team says. That never works. But listen to them because ultimately they're on. I like to think there's a one of my clients. They're one of their salespeople. Uh, they always say, sales teams are the infantry and marketing is the air cover. And so you're going to the same objective, but you just have different tools.
Hmm. I love that. Another way you could say that is if you don't know how your sales leader or sales partner is like their coffee, then you don't know them well enough. So I really agree with you that there needs to be that collaboration and not siloization. All right, we're going to get into life now. This is my favorite part because I truly believe some of the best marketers, some of the best kind of people in business, they also have a very good grasp on life or just a very unique way to see it. So I think life is kind of paramount to doing good marketing. So jumping into that section, what is an idea? If you could incept one idea into the minds of every marketer, every human, there's this movie Inception, they go into people's minds, implant
Great
ideas,
film. I love that one. Yeah.
wake up the next day and it's their idea. So what idea would you incept that everybody tomorrow wakes up and they're like, I'm living out of this idea?
Yeah, I think it's that you really can do anything you want in life, but you have to take the small steps to get there. You can't just wait for it to happen, and you have to be patient. A lot of times, the only distance between you and where you want to go is just time. And so, if you're patient enough and you take those small daily steps to get there, uh, you'd be surprised at what might happen. I'm shocked at where I am right now in life versus where I was 5 years ago. And then the change didn't happen overnight. There were big milestones along the way, but it was just baby steps every day. So um, that's what I would say.
I love that. Yeah, I think it would remove a lot of suffering because a lot of people are thinking that it should happen quicker. They're just
Yeah.
lacking that patience, or they just take different routes trying to get there faster. And really, to your point, time is the variable in between what we want and where we're at. So I love that. Can't speed up time. What's a value or a belief that you don't think society puts enough focus or emphasis on?
That's a great question. I'm going to think about that for just 1 second because I want to make sure a value or belief. Um, I think commitment. I think we tend to live in a culture where if something is not working, you just jump to the next best thing. And this kind of goes to point number one a little bit is, uh, you know, certainly I would never tell somebody that they need to be in a situation that's abusive or a situation that's dangerous or anything like that. Like obviously not. Like putting those things aside, sometimes the best way to make the most of your life is to make the most of the life that you have, and so stay committed to what you're doing. And if you need to change, you know maybe you do. But I think commitment is something we definitely undervalue.
Hmm, I love that. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see level of commitment over time, just because I think it has fluxed, and I do think, to your point, maybe with more things and more engagements and more all of these things, it essentially has lowered the value of commitment, or it has made it harder to hold that value. And as we all know, we take usually the path that's easiest traveled. So if commitment is a hard path, I'm not going to take it, and life has
Well,
made it
and
more
I'll just add
harder,
to
maybe.
that too. If you change your circumstances, you're still taking you into the next situation. And so sometimes, the problem that you're currently facing is with yourself and it's not with your external
Oh,
circumstances.
I don't want to hear that. Yeah, no, totally,
Oh, look,
totally
man, I
agree.
don't either.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Did
not
you
a
say
convenient.
something? I think you cut out there. It can't be me.
Oh man, no,
Oh,
no.
that's awesome.
Sorry, I
That's
wasn't
great.
intending to turn this into a therapy session, but here we are.
Oh, geez. All right, I'll pay you after. If you could donate $1 million to a cause, to an initiative, and nobody knows you did it, what would you give that $1 million to?
This is gonna sound so cliche, but I think it really is. What I would do is we have more than enough food in this world to feed every single person on the planet at least one time over, if not more. Um, the problem is distribution, and corruption and war keeps us from doing that. And so I have no idea how to solve that problem. But if I had $1 million, I would find people who were smart enough to solve that problem and do whatever we could. Because that just to me that just I don't understand that.
I love that. That's very poignant. What's a habit, what's a practice you do outside of business, outside of marketing, that when you come back to do business and marketing, you do it just a little bit better?
Yeah. So in addition to running my content agency, I'm also a creative writer, and being able to exercise that muscle in a completely different context. I'm working on writing a science fiction novel right now. Fingers crossed, we'll be publishing that next year. Probably going to end up self-publishing at least this first one. So we're gonna see how that goes. Or this is very you're getting a tease there, but yeah, because using writing, but in a different context, I always pull something and not, I'm not even conscious of it, but I'm pulling something in, and vice versa. Because also being a content writer in an agency, and where you're on deadline and you have to execute, the client deadline is there, you've got to get it done. That's also helped with creative writing as well. So I think
Hmm.
both ways.
I love that. Yeah, there was a an article I read a while back that just said every time you do writing or you do something, you essentially lower the future cost of that thing. So I
Yeah,
do find that it's really important to write in all sorts of ways. So then when the gun is on your head to write, it's a lot easier than like, oh shoot, I need the muse. Where's the muse at? It's like, no, I just write when I need
you
to
just
write
write. Yeah,
because I love that. And
you
I
can
think
always edit
that's
it later if you don't like it.
Amen to that. That's what Grammarly's for. All right, final question. What is one thing that you hope doesn't change in the next 10 or so years?
So I'm married, have kids, a whole boatload of them, and they're all little right now. And so we're kind of in that stage of life right now where we're all kind of like this little, we're kind of just little pod going through life and doing stuff, because just how you are when you have little kids. Um, 10 to 15 years, that's not going to be the case. That's just not how it works. But what I hope doesn't change is that connection and those relationships that even as life happens and as it will, and you want that to happen for yourself and for your kids and your family, that connection and that those relationships that doesn't change as time goes on.
Beautiful way to end, Timothy. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate the wisdom and
Appreciate you.
time.
Thank you so much.
And this is the end of the podcast. Thank you for making it to the end. It means the world to me that you watch or you listen to this episode, and hopefully you're walking away with new insights to improve how you think about marketing in life and help you make progress on what matters to you. But one thing before you go, if you could subscribe wherever you're listening to this or watching, that would really help out both you getting the episodes right when they come out and raising this podcast in the rankings. So hopefully more people like you can listen to this. And if there's anything that I can do to make this podcast more beneficial for you, if it's somebody you think I should interview, if you're the person, please comment, please email me. It's in the show notes so we can just continually deliver more value to you, the listener. Again, thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day, evening, week, and hope to see you here next time.